morning to everyone. Thank you joining today our first virtual annual conference of the International Emergency Management Society. I want to thank before everything to thank the team of Resilience France, which managed this virtual event on a Zoom tool. Thank you very much to all of you, especially Lauriane and her team. Then I want also to thank TIEMS, the International Emergency Management Society, for the confidence they give to the French chapter, Resilience France, to manage this organization for the first time on a virtual manner and in these very peculiar conditions of COVID pandemic situation. I would like to give the floor now to Mr. Christian Somade, which is the director of Resilience France, French TIEMS chapter, to give a welcome address and to begin the opening session of this annual conference. Christian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jean-Paul. Thank you and hello to everyone. I'm pleased to welcome you to this TIEMS 2020 annual conference. Of course, I would have preferred to welcome you physically in Paris, but the very special times we are living through this year, and we wish we remember for a long time, only allow us to this virtual communion. To discuss a subject that is particularly dear to all of us, the management of emergency crisis situation and the approach of resilience. But I really hope to be able to repeat this welcome next year, this time physically in Paris, and we'll be very happy to welcome you all and to meet face to face. Before giving the floor to the different speakers this morning, I would like to thank, like Jean-Paul did, the President Harald Dreiger for the confidence and his constantly renewed commitment to TIEMS. I would like to thank the member of our association, HFRN, some whom, as you know, represent the French chapter of TIEMS, and who have worked on the preparation. And I hope to ensure the smooth running of this virtual conference. First and foremost, Jean-Paul, who has worked a lot on the program, and I think the program is very dense and very various. Thank you, Jean-Paul, and also Lauriane and Manon for all the technical and communication aspect. And I think this program, as I said, is very complete, dense, varied, and I have no doubt that it will bring us knowledge and sharings, which are the aim of our association, including on this COVID-19 that we will start this afternoon and tomorrow. I would like to remind you that if you have questions, please use the Q&A system, which is on the bottom of the command line. And if you have any technical issue or other type of issue, use the chat room, please. Now I think it's my time to give to wish you a very good conference and to give back the floor to Jean-Paul to introduce our morning speakers.
Thank you, Christian. Our morning speakers are now represented by European Commission, and I will give the floor to Mr. Fillon, which is ASEAN Desk Senior Officer at European Commission. It's the DG RTD. He will be accompanied by Mr. Dalibor Djalacha, which is a research consultant by Serbian Republic of Bosnia University Clinical Center, and by Mr. Dr. Manop Sitidek, which is Minister Counselor, Director by Thailand Embassy to EU Commission. So, Mr. Fillon, the floor is yours, and please feel free to speak.
Yes, hello, good morning. I am setting my computer, so I want to double check if you can hear me and see the presentation. Can you hear me? And can you hear the presentation?
We hear you very well, and maybe is the presentation not fully full screen, or is it?
No, it's full screen. It's good.
Okay, good.
Full screen. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yes, dear colleagues around the world, it's a pleasure discussing with you today about this very important topic that TIEMS is handling every year. So I'm very looking forward to give you a few hints on what we do at the European Commission, but I will be listening to the presentations today and after. Today also we wanted to innovate because we are in a special world, I would say. So I wanted to innovate with having with me Dalibor Jakliska, who has been helping on a specific attempt we tried with Thailand to look at disaster prevention, and therefore Dr. Manop, who work also in Brussels for representing his country, Thailand. So I will move forward, but let me thank in French the organizers. So merci beaucoup à vous, à l'équipe, toute l'équipe en France, et je vous souhaite une très bonne conférence. Just a few words. I am in charge at the European Commission of the diplomatic relation with ASEAN and Japan, as well as I supervise almost all the rest of Asia. You can reach me on the email mentioned on the first slide, and you will have this email at the end. I also know that today a few colleagues who are scientists are participating already in some EU projects, and they will present their work. What is, just to start with, how we work at the European Commission. The European Commission bases its approach on research and innovation projects on what EU countries are doing. So we are not reinventing the wheel. But what you see here in the middle is the necessity, considering today's challenges, to really move towards a roadmap. A roadmap is not something purely administrative. In fact, all the technology companies have technology roadmaps. So we need to establish a roadmap to identify clearly areas where Europe is strong, where a partner is maybe not so strong, but opposite, where a partner is strong and where we also need to cooperate. This is how we target cooperation. And I will give you very concrete examples in the next slides. So what matters when we cooperate, I will give you the example later of what we do with ASEAN countries on disaster prevention. But what we need is to make sure that we have sufficient funding. What we call in Brussels is a little bit a jargon, scale. So enough money to reach an impact, and enough scope show that whatever we do together with with another country or with a region has an impact. For example, if we work on tsunamis, that we have at least 2-3 countries and not only one involved. And now you might know that the EU has defined with a new president von der Leyen our 3 priorities, which are Green Deal. We are faced with a major climate situation, with a digital transition. We live it right now, today, speaking to you in Zoom, and health issues. Those are the 3 priorities. So we need to define for all those partners really what we can do together. And I will give you the example of what we have done, which is very important, is how the European Commission put money on the table in international initiatives, because the Commission can lead, but we need the backup of countries, we need the backup of business. So it's always what we call joint funding. And of course, now the big impact of COVID is already felt in all the areas of research, because we are not able to be mobile. So this has a dramatic impact in terms of fellowships. I will mention via Dalibor, we'll mention the Marie Curie and Sklodowska-Curie actions. Erasmus, all those projects are not stopped, but they are not possible. So we need to develop new schemes. This is an example of what we do with ASEAN. It does not address yet disaster prevention, so what you are doing. But if at the end of today, via Dr. Harald and the contribution of colleagues, we feel at the Commission that disaster prevention could be an issue to address together, we are very keen to use this funding scheme for your topic. So you have here the website of that scheme, and it's a scheme that looked at so far at pandemics, antibiotic resistance. So rather the health issues, which are also major issue in the world. But we could look at your domain. So I will encourage you to flick through. It's a new funding scheme by the European Commission, and it's much lighter than any other schemes that you might know under Horizon Europe because it only requires 3 partners. It can be 1 partner in EU, in this case with 2 partners in ASEAN, or 2 partners in EU and 1 partner in ASEAN. And the corresponding partners are paid by their respective governments. So for example, if there is a German with a Thai and Singaporean, the Thai and Singaporean are paid respectively by their administration, and the BMBF in Germany will pay the German partner. So this is a very light scheme. And in particular, I want to flag this because it enables small size projects. From about 100 to 300,000 euro. And sometimes for scientists, it's very difficult to reach smaller size projects. Another example, maybe the screen is cut. I don't know if you can see it well, but at the top of the page you have, it's called Green Tech, greentechtransfers.eu. This is something that started in September. Let me tell you a little bit the background. This is extremely specific. The first example before was about joint funding, whereby we ask a respective administration to co-finance. Here, it's something very new. We are looking at best practice in Europe and in ASEAN countries on plastic management, sustainable manufacturing, where technology transfer can happen. At the beginning of the project, when we launched it in January, we were thinking about plastic waste because it's a huge problem in ASEAN countries. ASEAN countries are unfortunately recipient of the garbage from Europe. So we are ecologically, economically responsible in Europe for this. And we have technologies that can be used in those countries to better process. The domain of sustainable manufacturing was because ASEAN is a hub for manufacturing. It's not only China. When you look at the shoes that you use every day for walking, your clothes, they are mostly made in Asia and large part in ASEAN countries, in Vietnam, Thailand. So we need to encourage them to use less energy whenever they produce products. This was the beginning of the discussion in January. Of course, COVID came, so we have reoriented the project towards COVID. It means now we are looking at technology transfer in the domain of plastic, reprocessing of masks, of respirators for hospitals, sustainably produced. So we want to, in this project, achieve something extremely concrete. It's research, but it's also technology transfer. So look at this website. The last example, and I mentioned today that several colleagues in your domain are there, because this is the domain of security and disaster prevention. Dalibor will develop a little bit more on how much money we have planned so far in your domain, but I want to flag some of those projects. In particular, those are the ones that exist right now. And one of them is the second on the list is links. And I know that some colleagues from links are present today. This project is extremely interesting. First, because it's a large financing of the EU, it's more than 5 million euros, but it has very concrete way of dealing with different type of disasters. You can see it here on the left side, earthquake, flooding. terrorism, tsunami, and drought. So those are the colleagues. I am in contact with the scientific coordinator, Nathan Clark. Those are projects where we could look. Now the consortium is already large. You see it has 6 European partners, but we could look at the possibility of extending, maybe via additional funding, this consortium. In particular, this project links ends in December 23, so it means it's still 3 years to run, and it's an extremely dynamic project. So I encourage the colleagues who will be at the conference from Links to mention and flag highly their project. I would like to pass the floor to Dalibor. Dalibor has been working with the European Commission to identify groups in Thailand in your domain. And I can tell you that it's not always that easy to go to the bottom and really come back with concrete matching. Concretely a way to bring some Europeans to link with new partners, like with Thailand. So Dalibor, the floor is yours. And dear colleagues, I will be very happy to answer questions by email and via the conference organizer. So once more, thank you very much, Harald, for having given me the floor to represent the European Commission. And I will be happy to listen to you, dear colleagues. Thank you. Harald, the floor is yours. You just need to say next slide.
Thank you, Pierrick. I would like first of all to greet all of you that are listening to our presentation, and also I would like to thank a lot for the organizers of the conference for providing us the opportunity to present these issues. As I was already introduced, I would like to ask Pierrick for the next slide. I will not take your time. So where the money for this project is coming from. Usually those are the framework programs for the innovation, for the research and the technology. So next program that is going to start in the next year, in 2021, and will last until 2027, will be a similar structure as former program, Horizon 2020. So it will have the first pillar, which is dedicated especially for the development of the scientific thought. Then second pillar is more something that is related to the societal challenges. And that's the place where the disaster resilience will be located in the next program. And for that pillar, there are foreseen, we don't know exactly the figure now at the moment, but it was foreseen something over 52 billion of euros to resolve these problems, which include health, culture, creativity, civil security for society. This is important. Digital industry and space, climate, food, and other specific domains. And the last one, the last pillar, which is innovation and market entry, is to increase innovativeness in Europe among the small and medium enterprises. So these are the three pillars which are more or less the same as in the previous program. Next slide, please. So the Disaster Resilience Society is in so-called cluster number 5, inclusive and secure societies. And this is the place where, when you are going to search for the calls, you are going to find the call on this specific domain in this specific pillar. So the page that is used, it's a one-stop shop for all the calls in the framework programs, called Funding and Tender Portal. And this is the place where you're going to find the calls for the disaster resilient societies among the inclusive and secure societies. Next slide, please. What are going to be the priorities for the disaster resilience? This is something that is most interesting for all of you, because it shows you what the European Commission expects to be resolved in this period from 2021 to 2027. So the funds will be dedicated to resolve the problems of continuous fights against terrorism and crime, strengthening the border security management, protection of crucial infrastructure, cybersecurity, disaster resilient societies, regardless natural or man-made disasters, and strengthening research in innovation and security. Not all of these priorities are going to be open for international cooperation. The international cooperation means that the participation of the so-called third countries is encouraged. The main participants in the Horizon Europe program are member states countries and associated countries. They have full access to the program, but the international cooperation is open for the other countries to participate, which means all other countries which are not belonging to these first two groups. However, disaster resilient societies is going to be strongly encouraged for international cooperation. This means that the consortium is eligible to have third countries' institutions inside. And this is the opportunities for all countries that are out of these two groups to participate in disaster resilient societies. Therefore, we see TIEMS and other agencies and the associations, but especially TIEMS, helpful in this respect. You can spread the word about this among your colleagues and your peers, and they can easily connect with your European partners. What I learned in this couple of years working with the European Commission on matchmaking, there is a problem that visibility of the third countries' researchers is very low. And now we need to encourage this and make it somehow happen so that European researchers, those that are participating in the program and will increase the participation of the third countries, are aware of these capacities. However, beside the disaster resilient societies as a part of the chapter, you can also candidate your proposal as an individual fellow. So you can go to the Marie Sklodowska Key Reactions. This is the fellowship program that is continuing and most successful program in Horizon 2020, where the most of the international cooperation was happening actually. More than 140 nationalities represented 25% of total participation. So you see that these figures are very promising for the researchers from the third countries. This is the bottom-up program and competition-based, and it's highly competitive. The percentage of the success rate is between 10 and 15%. But we are now creating more simple rules, fine-tuned definitions, and harmonized conditions in order to enable this individual mobility happen. The scheme itself is composed of 5 elements: doctoral training networks for PhD students, postdoctoral fellowships for doctorals, for the PhDs, staff exchanges for any type of research staff, synergies. This is the specific program where the European Commission is co-funding the existing or newly created training programs for mobility. And there is some kind of outreach activity which is called science festivals. It is public outreach events where we want to promote and bring closer the science towards the common people and the wider public. More information you can find on this link. Next slide, please. But there is a usual questions that international cooperation is risky. I faced with this problem many times, and as a main 2 issues, the brain drain or knowledge drainage and IPR issues, they are 2 main obstacles for enabling this international cooperation. This means that we have to overcome somehow these issues, and this is not a problem to overcome if you develop the confidence and trust, if you have some good consortium, if you create good relationships between the partners, and if you create this kind of mutual understanding of the benefits. Because there is for the project is important that all sides are satisfied with something what they are doing together. So we have to bring them close together, to work together with them. And especially what I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago is we need to increase somehow the visibility of the third countries and their capacities to respond to the challenges of the projects. Next slide, please. Example of the trainings that European Commission is using to improve the visibility and the kind of interaction with the third countries is the recent webinar that I have held in Thailand, but it was also a webinar because of these epidemics. So there is a link. You can visit the site. It is still alive. It is still online. And there you have the presentation of the past calls in disaster resilient societies. So I tried briefly in 10 minutes to explain what is the call, what is the purpose of the call, and how to respond to that call. And also in the same page, you will find also the webinars on Marie Sklodowska key reactions. So this is very good source of information for you if you're starting and planning to develop the cooperation with European Union institutions. Next slide, please. More important links, as I mentioned, are this funding and tender portal, which is official one-stop shop for everything what is done in the European Commission related to the framework program. Euraccess is the association of institutions that are providing proximity assistance to the researchers, and also there are some job offers there. I belong to this next group of national contact points. We are also trained to provide the first-hand assistance to all participants, especially participants from our countries where we are coming from. Quartis is a source of success stories. You can find already financed and completed projects, and you can read the abstracts and see what and get the flavor of how the proposal should look like and what kind of problems it's supposed to solve. And what is very important is the online manual for international cooperation. This is very important when you have some doubts on your participation in the program. And with this, I would like to save the time for Dr. Manop and other participants today, so I don't want to break my time. I would like once again to thank you and wish you good luck. And whatever you have the question or you would like to any kind of assistance from my side, please feel free to use my email that you will find on the end of the presentation. Thank you, and I give the floor to Dr. Manop.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you, Chairman, and good morning to all distinguished speakers and participants all around the world today. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer for having me here today, and the Office of Science and Technology, Royal Thai Embassy, Brussels, and Mission of Thailand to the EU represent Thailand's Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Research, and Innovation in Europe. The office, therefore, is responsible for to promote the international collaboration on higher education, science, research, and innovation between Thailand and Europe. We have been working closely with EU Commission, especially with DG Research and Innovation. Next, please. And during the previous 6 years, from 2012 to 2018, we can see from the slide that a total of 1,380 disasters have been recorded, while the floods, windstorm, and landslides are the most frequency. Slower onset disasters such as droughts still pose significant risk, primarily for ASEAN's agricultural-based community. Next, please. As you can see in the slide, flood created the highest economic loss to Asia. Then it followed by earthquakes, tsunamis, cyclones, and drought. Based on such statistical data on global disaster situation, it is projected that a trend in global natural disaster occurrence had been on the rise in terms of the frequency and intensity. And subsequently, this exacerbating disaster situation may cause more severe losses to human lives and infrastructures. Next, please. Next, please, Pierrick. Pierrick, are you there? The Thailand situation for disaster. We have some technical issue because I'm not the person that will forward the slides. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, here from this slide, you can see that Thailand is vulnerable to the influences of monsoons and tropical system, which enhance their vulnerability to natural disaster impact, such as flooding, typhoons, landslides, droughts, and earthquakes. Why Thailand is less susceptible to natural hazards than many of the countries in the Indo-Asia Pacific region. It is remain vulnerable, and the frequency of natural disaster in the country is due to seasonal weather and climate change in the region. Tsunami and earthquakes also pose threats to local population, also to a lesser extent. Flooding is the most serious and frequent disaster, and it generally occurs annually. In 2011, up to 66 provinces were affected by the worst flooding in decades, displacing millions of people and causing enormous economic loss. And in fact, the damage disaster in at that time for the 2011 in Thailand, it cost 14.7 billion US dollar, 13.6 million affected people. Next, please. And this slide shows the organization which have the important roles and responsibility for disaster management in Thailand. The Department of Disaster Prevention and Mitigation, DDPM, under the Ministry of Interior, is the lead agency for disaster management. The Royal Thai Armed Force are an integral part of the national policy framework on disaster management. We also have the Royal Thai Police, which is responsible for law enforcement and public order. And finally, we have the Thai Red Cross Society is a key responder whose function in disaster management is included in the National Disaster Prevention and Mitigation Plan. Next, please. And here, on the other hand, this slide lists the organization which play a vital role in terms of research agencies related to disaster management, which will include preparedness, prevention, response, and recovery at the following. The first one, Geometric and Space Technology Development Agency Public Organization, or GISDA, under the Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Research, and Innovation, has been playing a significant role in direct reception of the Earth observation satellite signals, data archiving and processing, image analysis, provision of satellite data and GIS services in various forms, providing technical support, space technology research and development. And we have the Hydroinformatics Institute, or HII, under the same ministry, has played an important role in the development and implementation of flood forecasting and management systems. We have the National Science and Technology Development Agency, NSTDA, under the same ministry, has played a vital role for innovative developments and research and developments related to disaster response. And finally, we have the Department of Mineral Resources under the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. Is responsible for providing geoscientific information towards the wise use of geological resources, raising the public awareness about the earth and the environment, and also minimizing the victims of the natural disaster. Next, please. And regarding the potential collaborative project, there are two calls which are related to Horizon 2020 calls for the disaster resilient society. And currently, there are two proposals related to Horizon 2020 call disaster resilient society, which have submitted, including building earthquake resilient communities and society, and the other one, building earthquake and natural disaster resilient communities and society, mitigation, preparedness, and response in Bangladesh. Please note that the Office of Science and Technology of Thailand in Brazil is not only responsible for the collaboration on Horizon 2020 call for the disaster resilient society, but also we are interested in other clusters such as health, digital and industry, climate, energy and mobility, food and natural resources, as mentioned by Mr. Delibor previously. And regarding the Thai presenter in this conference, I'm delighted to mention that we have Dr. Pradit Nule from Department of Mineral Resources. Thailand will be a speaker on Wednesday, the 2nd of December, session 5. He will share knowledge and experiences on the topic of community-based landslide watch networks in Thailand. And then we have Dr. Chersak Virapat on Friday, the 4th of December, session 9. In the morning session as well, will present on the topic adaptive management for building community resilient on earthquakes and natural disaster in Bangladesh. Thank you for your kind attention. The Office of Science and Technology in Brussels will be delighted to coordinate on the collaboration on the Horizon 2020 as well as the next one, Horizon Europe, between Thailand and Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sitidek. Thank you very much, sirs, having presented this holistic view on all resilience initiative policies managed by European Commission, but also giving a very nice illustration to see the link to the terrain with this interesting demonstration with Thailand. Thank you again. So I'm now moving slowly toward the official opening talk, which will be given by Mr. Dr. Harald Reger, the International Emergency Management Society President. And Harald, the floor is you now.
Thank you, Jean-Paul. Let me try to get my slides on. Okay, is it coming?
Not yet in
No,
full
I
screen.
see.
You try again.
I try one more.
Yes. It seems working.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's okay?
Okay.
Okay. First of all, thank you all for joining us this morning. I just looked and saw that we are about 70 participants, and that is good. We should have all been in Paris and enjoying Paris this week, but we have been hit by the pandemic, and I just saw the numbers this morning, and we are soon 1.5 million dead by the pandemic, and soon 63 million people are infected all over the world, and the numbers are rising. So emergency management, how to deal with disasters, and this is the large one, is a very important topic. What I will do today, I will give you a little bit background. I am sure many of you don't know about TIEMS. So I've been the president since 2002, and the organization was started back in 1993 in Washington, DC. And we have developed over these 27 years. And I give you some brief introduction. TIEMS is a global forum for education, training, certification, and policy for emergency and disaster management. We are not active in the field yet, but we learn people how to respond to emergencies, and we do this through three main activities. We have what we do today, communication through TIEMS conferences, workshops, and newsletters. And I was very happy with the morning keynote speech by Pirek, Dalibor, and Manap, telling about the opportunities in research. And this is a quite big activity in TIEMS. I will describe a little bit later. And we also see that education and certification is very important, that we find a common language all over the world. How do we operate and communicate on emergencies? TIEMS, we are an international organization. So what do? We are registered in Brussels as a not-for-profit NGO. And we have chapters all over the world. We have still not got any chapters in South America, but as you see, it's all over the world. And this is a way to think globally and act locally. And you see on the left side here, where do we have chapters in the world? And we try to use these chapters in also our research. So I was very happy with the morning speech, told about those opportunities. And I'm sure our chapter leaders and participants see this opportunity, and we can even develop this further. Conferences and workshops, I just show you an overview picture of some of the people that have participated. This is from US, it's from Philippines, it's from China, India, and it shows the diversity of conference and workshop we have worldwide. Actually, I also like to show you a list. We started back in '94 with our first conference after we had established the organization in Washington, DC in 1993. So we had the first conference in US in 1994. And then every year we have moved around the world, as you see. And we will also then cover the last parts of the continents where we haven't been, because we will be in South Africa in 22 and back in Beijing in China in 23. And I'm so happy to also announce that even if it's been a quite challenging time to arrange all this virtually, the French chapter of TIEMS will collect all of you, gather all of you in Paris next year in France for the next conference. And then I hope we have control of the pandemic so we can all meet in France. Then back to research, and this is one of TIEMS' main activities, which we, as you saw, of one of our main activities. And as today, you see that TIEMS have done 4 EU projects funded by the EU since 2006 up to 2020. We were involved in the ASSET project, which actually dealt with pandemics. It was all about communication, because the first tendons of pandemic, we had the swine flu, and then WHO thought this would be a pretty high crisis. It happened to be a mild influenza, and by that, all sort of theories came up that this was all done as a conspiracy in order to gain money for the big companies doing vaccines. So the project focused actually on how do we communicate in a pandemic situation. And I think what we did and what the results of this project is also very important in this pandemic. And one main thing came out of it, and that was public participation in a pandemic. How do you communicate with the public? How do you get them involved and communicate? And also through a workshop we had, the public said, we like to know the truth. Don't try to tell us anything else than the truth. We have to deal with the truth. This other project was Heracles, and Heracles was about protecting cultural heritage against climate change. And then we did what we call the European Hub project for DG ECHO. This was looking into how can we do certain central hubs in Europe in order to deal with the different disasters. And we concentrated this example hub on wildfires. And we proposed a report, how could we do this also with other disasters? The project we are involved in at the moment is called Impetus. It is about smart cities, and I will come back to a little bit more on that. But besides these projects we have done, we have also, with our people, been involved on user board and advisory boards on different EU projects. We were also involved, we also do something for free. TIEMS is a volunteer organization where everybody works for free. We are not for profit, and we were a contributor to the World Bank study on the state of civil protection in the world, with inputs from Australia, China, and Ukraine chapters of TIEMS. And, which I also will come back to a little bit later, is we are developing a TIEMS international certification, which we call TQC. More on that later. And at the moment, because in the EU, as described by Pierrick and Dalibor, there are different calls. And we get more and more popular because we have a huge international network of experts. So we are involved in 3 proposals, which are under evaluation. We participate in giving another proposal, 2 more proposals, one to the DG ECHO and one to Erasmus+. And also 2 other projects to be submitted in January. So what do we focus on? We think it's important to focus on cultural differences to be understood and included in the society's events, education, and research programs. Because different parts of the world, they do emergency management a little bit different. We have something to learn, all of us, from each other. So it's important that this is exposed in a research project, and that's part of what we do. Then back to Impetus. Impetus is project name is Intelligent Management of Processes, Ethics, Technology for Urban Safety. And this project focused then on processes, ethics, and techniques. And here is listed the different partners. We are about 20 partners in Europe. And the focus is Impetus will provide city authorities with new means to address security issues in public spaces and so help to protect the citizen. Using data gathered from multiple sources, it will facilitate detection of threats, help human operators dealing with threats to make better informed decisions. And we have 2 demonstration cities, Padova in Italy and Oslo in Norway, where I actually live. And we will present this project. The consortium leader is Sintef in Trondheim, and Joe Gorman from Sintef will present more details about this in the afternoon of Thursday in session 8. And this project was, of course, funded by the European Union's Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Program. TIEMS education, training, and certification is important. We believe that education, training, and international certification in emergency management and disaster response is the key to improve the resilience worldwide. And TIEMS is therefore initiating a comprehensive international education, training, and certification program in this field. Our motto is preparedness saves lives. And in this process, we are putting focus on the profession of emergency management, and we like to contribute to an international shared understanding of elements, qualification, and terminology in this field, promoting state-of-the-art, and contribute to education in all levels, from policy documents to courses in primary school education. And our certification is, of course, a key element in this initiative, and we like to contribute to capacity building in countries where little or no education and training in this field is available. I just forgot to mention that in the Impetus project, when teams get involved in a project, we recruit our experts, those who are qualified. And in this project, we have 13 experts from all over the world, from all over chapters, to participate. And this makes it possible to spread the news in these countries so they understand what is this about. Then our, or should I say, my baby at the time being in TIEMS is what we call TIEMS International Certification, or what TQC. TQC can act as a facilitator element in the cooperation efforts between countries and organizations, using a common language and a common knowledge and understanding of international emergency management disaster response. And I have illustrated all this goes online. We have the candidate to the left, and he goes through different phases of this, all online. He does an application, fill out an application form, and this is evaluated by this TIEMS certification board. And if he passes, we think he's ready to start the certification. He have to upload documents of his experience, of his education, and he have to show that he is compliant with our requirements. And that is evaluated by TIEMS compliance board. And when he's passed this level, he goes through the examination. And then when he passed the examination, he or she will be awarded the TQ certification. We have a workshop on Thursday afternoon where we will go more into detail of this. So I hope you will join us then too. But a little bit, what have we developed and what is the system of this certification? As you see to the right in the screen, we have established 3 boards which deals with this. We have the certification board, we have the compliance board, and we have the examination board, where we use experts from all our chapters in order to evaluate and see to that the candidate go through this process. And through this is a work fully volunteer developed by TIEMS volunteers. And you will find more on TIEMS website, but we have developed what we call public documents, which are free and open to everybody can see what is this about. And it's a TQC description, application form, and also code of conduct. And for those candidates that goes into the system, they will get a certification guide. What do they have to do through the certification process? And they have an examination guide and TQC examination questions. At present, we have a candidate have to go through 50 multiple choice questions and 10 essay questions. And we have introduced something that makes it possible for each candidate to do his certification where he is. We have established a cooperation with Proctor Free, so he will be monitored by Proctor Free when he does his examination, wherever he is. And on the board, we have procedures developed for the application and compliance process, for the examination answers and procedure for the TQC examination. So this is the concept of TQ certification. So that was a small glimpse of what we have been doing, but we look now into the future. And I think I can say that TIEMS is established now after 27 years and recognized worldwide as an important and serious actor in emergency management and disaster response. And in the future, we will focus more on establishing more chapters. We have 17 at the moment. And for those of you who live in countries or regions where we have no chapter, think about it and see if you like to join us with your experts. And very important, get team chapters even more involved in research and development, just in line with the EU presentation this morning. And so far, we have only relied on ourselves in doing research and on the European Union. But I also know that there are many financial sources worldwide for support of RTD activities. And we will like to set our chapters to look into those possibilities as well. Recruit more members locally and internationally, and more education partners, because we are not developing all these courses alone. We have partners and we use what's there. We are not there to compete, we are there to cooperate. So if some of you work with education and courses, please take contact and we can include you in our efforts. And of course, recruit more cooperation partners for further development and national adoption of our TIEMS certification. I think that is all I will say now in the opening. My time is over, but I'd first like to say very much thank you to TIEMS French chapter with Jean-Paul, with Lauriane and Christian. They have done a tremendous job. This was a new challenge, getting everything online on Zoom, and we are very proud of you. You've done a great job. Thank you all for your attention, and I now like to introduce the first session. We have 3 sessions on COVID-19. The first one is now starting, and I'd like to introduce the chair, who is Dr. Yang-Yai Lee, who is involved in TIEMS chapter. There he is. I've known Lee for almost 20 years, and it's been a good friendship. And he was my vice president from 2003 for 3 years. So we have developed a friendship over many, many years. Please, the floor is yours, and good luck to all. I see we are 68 on board now. So have a good conference, and I will be back later in the conference. Good luck. Lee, you have to unmute. Lee, you have to unmute your microphone. We don't hear you. There you are.
Hello. Hi. Yeah, first session will be soon. Maybe after 2 or 3 minutes. Hello. How are you? Okay. Maybe
Lee, can you
3
hear me?
speakers.
Lee,
All
is the
first
connection
sessions.
okay for you?
Johnston, okay.
Hello, yes, I'm
Here.
here. Yeah, I'm here.
And
Yeah.
Jagri is here. And Simon. Simon, not yet. Okay, I hope he will come soon. Oh, Simon. Oh, okay, Simon.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah. Maybe first session is related to COVID-19. So 3 speakers takes part in these presentations. Okay. Each speaker takes 15 minutes and maybe question and answer takes on 5 minutes. Okay. The first speaker is medical doctor Jagori. Okay. Yeah. Are you ready to present?
Yeah, I'm ready. Can you hear me or not? How is the connection?
Uh-huh.
Okay, good.
Okay,
Good.
good. Okay.
Not so
Okay,
not
good.
so wonderful, but we can hear you.
Yes.
Thank you, Jean-Paul.
Just one. Okay.
Hello. Hi. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you
Yeah.
all.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. First speaker is medical doctor Jagori. Are you ready to present? Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah. Go on.
Can you hear me like this?
Yes.
Okay, so I can go on. Can you see my presentation from your place?
Yeah, I
Yes.
hear. Yes.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I can start whenever convenient for you.
Yeah, it's okay to start. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Jean-Paul. Thanks, Lauriane. Thanks, Professor Lee. And thanks, everybody, for the meeting. Let me introduce myself in few words. I'm a physician, of course. I'm an international public health specialist. And I've been in China for 20 years. And I've seen the epidemic on a daily basis from scratch, from the beginning in January, and commented on the website called COVID Minute on a daily basis as well. I will give you an input about the evolution and the output of this pandemic, specifically in China and in France, and I can make some comparisons. To respect the timesheet, I will have 5 parts. First one will be an epidemiologic one with the word kinetic. The second, we will see the public health dilemma. As a public health specialist, I will tell you how we think. We'll manage to see what are the tools for the disease management. And of course, when you speak about COVID, you have to speak about the sanitary fact and the economical impact. And we will conclude by 5 bring home messages. Let's see the kinetic. In fact, there was 6 phases. The first phases was in Asia and mainly in China, roughly for 2 months. Then we see in green the European kinetic, the European start, we changed already the caliber from maybe less than 500 deaths a day. That's the daily mortality per continent. Huh? So in red, at the beginning, we see Asia is nearly nothing, and popping out the European epidemic in March. And just after the third part is the American phase, the North American phase, followed by the fourth one, the Brazilian one, then the Indian one, and now with the temperature change, the last one with the North Hemisphere with Europe and US. Notice that when we see on average up to recently, to the winter, there was roughly 5,000 deaths a day, and now we increased to 7.5 thousand daily. One more thing about this slide. Africa, 17% of the population, nearly 2% of the fatalities. Next, so how, as a public health specialist, we have to consider this epidemic? It's a very complicated because you have to find the good balance, the good cutoff with sanitary measures, which implies strong measures, which sometimes can impact your freedom, and as well impact economy. So to find the cutoff according to the sanitary measures and the economic measure, it's every country show their DNA with this RNA virus. This RNA virus showed that every country gets its own specificities and react differently in different aspects. I just remind you a phrase from the SARS in 2003, from the governor from Hong Kong. He said already, we will die from the economical death before dying from the SARS. That means it's a very, very complicated, because when you start to be too much sanitary, you kill the economy and the freedom. And if you cannot, and if you don't touch, if you don't do any measure, the epidemic is popping out and with a lot of victims. Let's see what are the tools. So we've got a memo which is called individual tools and collective tools. And that's why all the different countries had their own specificity. For example, the Asiatic countries, with the historical memory, for them the mask was not an issue, because wearing mask was nearly in the habit according to historical memory or according pollution. The distance. So we've got this memo, individual one, mask, manual, matter, and for the collective one, test, tracking, and triage or temporary, means isolation of the patient. Test, we can see that some countries didn't have any test. Tracking, we can see that some countries didn't use the tracking, like you've got on the right side in Shanghai. If you want to access to your work or for anything, you need to get this QR code. So all the countries, we've got different reaction, and we can, these six preventive measures were the first phase. But if despite of this, you cannot control the epidemic, you have to get more measures. I show you what. That's the French epidemic, the recent one, the phase 2. We have to understand that in France, France is not Germany. France got only roughly 6,000 ICU beds compared to 20,000 beds in Germany. That means when the measure, the 3 and 3T measure were not enough, we have to move to the upper measure, which is called curfew. And we see that on the 17th November, we got already on the green is the ICU, because this disease doesn't affect too much people, because the lethality is 99% of the patients will get out of the disease. But it's affecting much more the sanitary system, the health system, by having too much patients in ICU. And then at the end of the day, you will have to make some choice, and that's what we don't. Where we don't want to go. So if you see the French recent epidemic, the numbers, you see that on the 1710, we've got 40% already of the bed in ICU were occupied by COVID patients. Then the government said, okay, we're going to limit the contact possibilities for 10-15 days. But despite this, it increased to 60% of the bed of ICU. That's why they decided to make a lockdown, and the lockdown was efficient. But when you make a lockdown, you know that there will be some complication with the social, with the economy and the freedom. So to go on with the health and the management, if we make a global sanitary told what we see. That's one, the Western countries were much more affected than the Asiatic one, that's for sure, in terms of sanitary. And second, when we see China, and I can speak why, because China was, this disease show us that if you are fast, you can win the war. If you are slow, if the decision flow is slow, you lose the war. For example, for the test, if you get the result by 3 days, it's already over. It's too fast. If you cannot track people, you cannot identify all the chain. That means we can already see on this that the Pacific countries made a very good management compared to the Western countries who, because of the system, were not prepared, could not take the quick measures because of the freedom measures, and that's why we see such a result. In terms of economy, you see that all sectors were affected. It can be all the transportation, it can be all the social life, and makes big controversies in Europe and in US, with those who are to get strict and those who are okay, let us leave because we're going to lose our economical power. For the 3 last minutes, let's see a global economical impact. There is a winner at the moment, which is China, will be 5% of GDP, supposed to be positive compared to all the others. And we can say that on the global aspect of sanitary and economic, those countries of Korea, Taiwan, China, and so on, make a good job, roughly. In terms of sanitary impact and in terms of economical impact, if we want to compare to the West, to the Occidental countries. To conclude, to make a conclusion and to make 5 bring home messages, it's a unique pandemic. Why? It's the first time that we see in the ICU department more than 50% of the beds for one disease. I see for the French experience. It's the first time that we see that the sanitary decisions lead the economic one. I remember you that 50 years ago, the HK flu, there were roughly 40,000 people dead, but the economic runs as usual. We see as well a huge innovation booming. For example, we found a vaccine in 10 months. Usually we use it in 10 years. We make it in 10 years. Or, as I told you, the Asiatic countries did better than the Western ones in multiple aspects. And this is we call it the X factor, means a the adhesion of the population compared to the Western one. And now we know that the pandemic risk is no more a fiction. And we have to be ready as well for a potential new one. Of course, global warming. Of course, the transportation, the global transportation, and of course, urbanization. I can go on with a lot to say, but let's start some Q&A. And thank you. And you can find my email address if necessary. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you so much, medical doctor Jagri. Okay, yeah. Next speaker, Dr. Johnston Wong. Are you ready to present?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Go on.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Yeah, My name is Johnston. I just start a brief introduction, and then I am a social worker by origin, and then I teach social work and social administration, social policy, etc. in China. I was born in Hong Kong, brought up in Hong Kong, educated in Canada, and then I went back to Hong Kong as a social work in the social work field. And then I started on 2006 to teach in China. At present, it is a university nearby Zhuhai. And in the last 10 years, I also devoted some work on social disaster social work. That means post-disaster social services. So we've been involved in a lot of disasters since the tsunami, Asian tsunami, etc. Well, I must apologize for some computer problem. And then I cannot show the background, and then I cannot show my PPT myself. It is really embarrassing for someone who is teaching and using Zoom every day, and suddenly it doesn't work for me. Okay, so sorry for that. And am I asking some friends to do me a favor to show my PPT? Is it Jean-Paul? Are you?
Yeah, I
helping?
try to do that, to do so. And is it that?
Yeah, it is the one. It is the one. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So I will try to go fast because there are a lot of information in my slide. And then I will try to skip some because as all of you know a lot about disaster management. So may I go to the next slide, Jean-Paul? The next slide, just now, the first speaker, Dr. Gulami, if I were correct, has mentioned that actually we have the SARS experience. That it is quite true. I was working in Hong Kong at that time in 2003 when the SARS hit Hong Kong hardly. And also, it also hit China, particularly in Beijing. And then, however, we have not learned sufficiently from that experience. We have learned something and we have made some changes, but probably there's still a lot to learn. Just like this COVID-19, maybe we have a lot to analyze after even 5 to 10 years from now. The second slide, please. Sean, can you, Jean-Paul? It's not around. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Do you see the third one? Do you want to go further?
Are you on the third one? I still see the we still see the cover only.
You don't see the slides?
No, we have only one, the first one.
Oh, it moves by me. Okay. How to proceed? I try again. I was very confident because for me it was good. And the first one.
Yes.
And
go down, can you?
Second.
Do you see the second?
Second, yes.
Okay.
52nd.
And now the third.
Okay.
Do you want to
go? So I will stay here. Yeah, please stay here. So now I will just talk briefly about 3 major points. One is the health EDRM. This is developed by by WHO. The second part, I will spend some time talk about the Wuhan experiences and what we have done. And then finally, I would try to go to the main part of this presentation that I would like to invite all of us to see whether we should collaboratively form some mechanism to develop mental health EDRM as well, using a social psychological approach. So can we go to next slide? Yes, the EDRM was a report released by WHO just in 2019. It seems that everybody is expecting that a major health crisis is coming up. And that is quite true. A lot of report before 2019 also showed that indication. And then even the Johns Hopkins University, they have developed one index that is called Health Security Index, Global Health Security Index. And they are trying to predict how well prepared are different countries in terms when they have to face a major public health crisis. So the report, WHO report, laid down its background, vision, outcomes, principles, components, and paradigm shifts of health, EDRM, emergency and disaster risk management. So can we go to a few slides after? Sean, please. Next slide. And then next one. And then next one. And then next one. Okay, so the previous slide, I think all of us are experts. You all already understand what is a DM cycle. But the vision of EDRM, health EDRM, is to maintain the highest possible standard for health and well-being for all people. And then it emphasized stronger community and country resilience, health security, universal health coverage, and sustainable development. So universal health coverage is one of the major aims of WHO, and sustainable development is the aim of the UN. We all understand this, and health EDRM developed by WHO are actually in line with all these major policies. So we then go to what the health EDRM will emphasize. Next, please. And then next, and then next, and then next. Now, this is what the health EDRM try to emphasize, and they call it paradigm shifts. And some of the paradigm shifts is already recognized before health EDRM. I mean, by in the disaster management field, we started from previous international conference. We all understand that we have to change from UN-based to risk-based, reactive to proactive, single hazard to all hazard, and then the whole of society, etc., etc. However, I think there are still some new things coming up from WHO. They emphasize two major things. One is whole government approach, and then the other one is whole community approach. And then can I go to next slide? Now, so the whole government approach means multi-sectoral, and then multidisciplinary collaboration, not just the scientists, not just geographical scientists like prediction of earthquakes, and then we not just rescue people like the police and the fire services, emergency people, and then we need a lot of other expertise in the whole risk reduction. But of course, I think when health EDRM is concerned, they consider, WHO consider the health sector is of course the major respondent. They should play a key role, and there's nothing that we are going to dispute. And also in this spectrum of intersector, mental health is also considered as one of the subjects. But what I'm trying to say, according to the Wuhan experience, it seems that we have not give sufficient emphasis on mental health. So I go to the part two, okay? The part two is to describe the outbreak of the COVID-19 in Wuhan. So it's a very short period. Actually, it's from early January until April of 2020. And more or less, things changes very rapidly. Of course, also in a way, it is not something easy to go over. For the Wuhan people, it's a tragedy. So we are talking about how this very short period of time has developed into various stages. So the number of things I would explain will be according to this table. Next, please. The next slide, please. Well, next, please. The COVID-19 actually started in Wuhan. Very likely is in the December of 2019. In December of 2019, but the actually outbreak or being recognized as a major thing is around January 23rd of 2020. And why do I remember this so clearly? Because in January 25th is the Chinese New Year. And at that time, I went to Sichuan with my family, and I was there enjoying or preparing to enjoy the Chinese New Year. And suddenly, we heard that the city was locked down, or Wuhan was locked down. It was on January 23rd. So, okay. So, although it seems that we learned a lot of lessons from SARS, people would say, hey, what about from early December to late January? Such a long gap of time. Are we not doing our work, that we are not alerting the people, or our alarm system has actually failed? That may be some question about it, and then I'm not going to defend it, but I think it is quite often, it is quite common in all major disaster. There are a time of warning, but normally the warning signs or alarm may be neglected or not noticed by the population. So anyway, this is something that it started. I just mentioned is really the outbreak start at January 23rd. We consider it as a milestone. Next, please. Thanks. So it is announced by the central government, by the state government, that the Wuhan city is to have a complete lockdown. And the Hubei province have a relative lockdown. And Wuhan city, as we know, is a city of 20 million people. So it's a big city, even although it's in the center of central China. It's not in the coastal, more developed area. And it is exactly because the CDC of China has sent 2 groups to the Wuhan. And this is the second group who consider and announce that it is a transmission between human and human. So an immediate action must be taken. And the government action by the state is rather drastic. No one really expect that a city of 20 million will be closed down. Next, please. I would like to consider that it's a whole government crisis response, because only the CDC alone or the health people alone cannot manage city lockdown. Next, please. Now, I'm not using my own data. There's a data developed by Professor Pan at the Huazhong University of Science and Technology. He is in the medical field. He said he divided the time into 5 periods. First is December. The first period is December to January, early January. There's no intervention because it was totally neglected. The second period is still in January. And there's no major intervention, but there's a lot of massive people movement because people are going back to New Year's holiday. Next, please.
Sorry, you have only 5 last minutes.
Okay, I know. Okay, I just watched my time as well. So and then from January 3rd there was a city shutdown, and then there was a gap. There was a gap from January 23rd to February 16th. There's almost 2 weeks. Why I say February 16th is so important? Because only after February 16th, the government are capable to mobilize resources, health resources from other provinces and enter into Wuhan. And then they build temporary hospitals. And then they exercise what we call testing all and treating all policy. So only after February 16th, they can do that. And the effect was only more evident in March, after mid-March. Next, please. So it is called, and at the same time, they call it a 5-in-1 community response. So the community workers and then the social workers and social service agency in the community is responsible for the city lockdown. Actually, people are not locked in the city. They are locked in their own estate. And every estate is locked. And then they are control security guard, control the entrances, and make sure that no one will go out without a reasonable excuse. So everything is contained in the living estate. So at the same time, in the estate, there may be some disadvantaged group, there may be older people, there may be single parents. They have to buy food. So actually it's the community worker who purchase the food for them and send them to their house. So without those kind of logistics, a community lockdown actually is not possible. And then it is a mobilization of 5 different people, 5 different groups of social workers and community workers. Next, please. Next, please. Okay, so the curve has been flattened. The spike, the highest point in Wuhan is February 1st. Okay, I think the data tell us that the lockdown and then treat all and test all policy also work for Wuhan. So I can use my last 3 minutes to talk about the psychological interventions. Next, please. Well, social workers across borders is our organization name. And during this time, we arrange a lot of training in the crisis intervention counseling. And then and interestingly, people from all over China, mainly psychologists, social workers, medical professionals, and then some enthusiastic volunteers, they all want to help. And how can they help? They help the people in Wuhan online. So there are numerous WeChat groups formed, hundreds of them. And then they are trying to offer counseling. So social workers across borders, being a social work intervention agency, we become their trainers and also their supervisors. We provide supervisions for these counselors to help the residents indirectly. So the next few slides tell the audience what we have done. So I am not going to elaborate on it. So it's just please next slide and next slide again. Next slide, please. So next and next. All right. So I just want to summarize the last 2 slides, and then I will end. The first thing is that it's a painful sickness because it causes a lot of pain. I think a lot of physicians around in the conference know better than I. And then it is a family sickness because it is spread among family members. So, and a lot of people died. And when one member died in the family, normally there are 2 or 3 members die in the same family. So it is very painful. And then there's a community disease because it's transmitted within the community. So it creates guilt and it also creates shame among the patients. So it is a highly fit. At the very beginning, it's a very high fatality rate. And in China, we have the death rate of crude death rate of 5.7% as compared to 2 to 3% in US. So why is it so high? Because we control the number of people being infected, but we cannot control the people who died out of that time. And particularly when medical resources is not sufficient, then the older people was infected, the death rates become higher. So it's high. So it creates a horror within the Wuhan. And then it is a mobilization challenge because we lock down the city. It is not just the other people. It's high. So there are a lot of organizations, particularly social workers group, and then social work educators, and then a lot of psychological educators. And then there are even business people, because we now have e-medicines, and a lot of e-medicines group immediately opening the counseling line, and then they record more than 100,000 or 200,000 inquiries during that period. So a lot of people come into help. And then I'm saying it's a psychological health problem more than a physical health problem because everybody was horrified. And then next slide, please. And then I will end there. Next slide, please.
Okay. Maybe it is time to end your presentation.
Okay, so I will end here. So I'm suggesting that just one conclusion. Thank you, Professor Lee. I would just do one conclusion. I'm suggesting that we have a very good TIEMS cycle. They have a theory, they have a lot of contribution. And then the WHO also has developed the health EDRM, but I'm saying it is not sufficient. And actually we should also develop a mental health EDRM. And in the process, we also found that psychological counseling services online is not just doing counseling. Actually, they are doing information giving. They are helping to match the medical resources and the native people. And then they are trying to encourage the people to recover. And then it actually cut across all the process from the early process after in January 31st and until the city was reopened in April 29th. April 9th, and even up to now, when there are a lot of post-traumatic stress, actually the counseling services is cutting across all area of 4 major area of disaster management. So I hope that my sharing will arouse interest in this area and hope that we can work this out and try to develop health and mental health EDRM. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much.
Sorry for
Dr. John's presentations. Okay, next speaker, maybe she names Dr. Simona Cavallini from Italy. Are you ready?
Yes, could you share? Make me present?
Go on. Yeah, go on.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Jeff.
Could you see my screen?
Yeah, screen.
Okay, great.
Okay, and next screen.
Okay. So, first of all, thank you to the international chapter to give me the opportunity to present this work. My name is Simona Cavallini. I'm the president of the TIEMS Italian chapter, and I'm going to present the work carried out with key members of our chapter that are Sandro Bologna, Vittorio Rosato, and Carmelo Di Mauro. We are going to present to you what happened in Italy. This is, I think, with COVID, obviously. And we thought that, we think that is a good example of citizens and cities and territories are facing this new hazard that is the COVID pandemic. Seems that doesn't work. Okay. How my presentation is structured. So what we are going to investigate is how the COVID pandemic affected Italy. We will look at the background, so what we have in terms of Italian system. We will see that, unfortunately, Italy was one of the first movers preventing and fighting the pandemic effects, the social, the economic, and the health ones. We will use the data on deaths and intensive care beds to see the 2 waves of COVID that we faced, and we analyzed what happened in 4 key dates. We can say that the second wave affected Italy in a totally different way from the first one. Maybe because this pandemic was more spread in our country. And maybe we got some experience from the first wave that helped us to better manage the second wave. We will briefly see how the Italian government decided to face the second wave after deciding a lockdown in the first phase. And then we will see which we believe are the main lessons learned from the first wave, what we are learning in the second wave, and suggesting how to go to proceed, let me say, with maybe a condition that we will follow in the next month to live with COVID. So what about the Italian health system? Our health system is characterized as a universal system, so addressing the right to health of all citizens is a public system that is publicly supported by taxes and providing services that we can think out of the market, because it has less cost to make these services accessible to most of the population. And together with the public structure and the public services, we have some private structures and services that are accredited to support the Italian citizens. One other important element of our health system is that we have some targets and some main indication and provision from the central government. That is, this aspect is managed by the Italian Ministry of Health, but the service management and the budget related to these health services are assigned to regions. So in Italy, regions are in charge of facing the health emergency, okay, on the territory. About the figures, key figures, we have this data updated on 2017. We can see that we have 1,000 hospitals in Italy, and they are very different spread in the region. So we have a number of public beds and a number of private hospitals and public hospitals, and we have some regions in which the number of beds from inhabitants are really higher than the other ones. This is, let me say, a background that help us to understand how Italy faced and going to face the COVID crisis. As mentioned before, we were the first mover. So the first case that we had was on the 21st of February. In, let me say, 2 weeks, more or less, on 8th of March, the decree of the presidency of the Council of Ministries in Italy decided restriction measures in all the Italian territories. So we became red zones to face this sudden emergency. We remain restricted for around 1 month, and we started to face one of the most important emergencies never happened in the modern year in Italy. With the special decrees, you can see on the left side on the screen the provision of our government about what was open in terms of economic and social services, and what remained green, so open, was what we can consider the essential services. So we were in a lockdown. We tried to measure, we see a number of numbers related to positive cases and so on. We have to say that in Italy, we started to identify only the cases with some symptoms. So at the beginning, the number of contaminated people was less than the actual one, because we didn't check for people that has no symptoms. And a way to understand our system, the Italian system, was able to cope with the COVID pandemic is the number of intensive beds. So again, we have a very heterogeneous situation at regional level. We have more than 7,000 intensive care beds in Italy. And in relative terms, we have some regions with 77 intensive care beds for a million inhabitants, to some other regions that have this availability that is more than the double. Looking at the data related to the intensive care beds and the deaths day by day, so these are figures related to the numbers of days, we can easily say the two ways that I mentioned before. So we experience a peak very close to the end of March, and then we are experiencing, or better, in the mid of November, we experience maybe the second peak. What you saw with these circles are the key dates that we decided to investigate. The first two are essentially the 2 dates that we use also to publish articles on the TIEMS international newsletter. And we investigated also some figures also of these two other dates. Very quickly, which is the situation on the just after the peak of the first wave. So we are 1.5 months after the first case. We have more than 80,000 deaths. We have more than 3,500 intensive care beds occupied, and the number of cases very high. We have the 5 most affected regions, with 74.8% of the total COVID cases, and almost 40% of the COVID cases were just in one region. On the right side of my slides, you can see which was the saturation of the intensive care beds. In Lombardy region and in Trentino Alto Adige, they occupied all the intensive care beds, and some of the patients of the regions were moved to other regions with less critical situation. So which was the response, a lockdown at national level, lasting almost 2 months and affecting all the Italian population, so 7 million of people. In that period, we were the first country in the world for the number of deaths and the third one for infected cases. At the end of July, so 5 months after the first case, the situation was very, very positive. So we increased the number of deaths of a few hundred units, and we were in a situation to have only 41 people in intensive care beds. Again, we have most of the cases were concentrated in 5 regions, and the response of the country, because as mentioned before by previous speakers, we have some important decision to take between the health situation and the economic situation. So most of the lockdown measures were gradually relaxed during the summer period, and at the beginning of immediately after the summer, school reopened, and some of the measures, socio-economic measures, were relaxed. What happened 8 months after the first case? So mid-October, we were in the at the beginning of the second wave. So you can see the saturation of the intensive care bed started to be something problematic. And let me say that the government focused more on recovery measures for the economic side and for the health system than for response. Situation 2 weeks ago, you can see saturation of the intensive care beds. We are reaching some critical levels. The government set on 30% of the capacity, the critical threshold to take into account for possible critical situations. We arrived to figures very close to the peak of the first wave, so almost 3,500 intensive care beds. And what we experienced is that in the first wave, the government decided not to adopt lockdown at national level, but we face the issue of the pandemic, the new wave of the pandemic, with a regional perspective.
Sorry, Madam, you should conclude now.
Yeah. So just to show you that one of the main difference was between the two ways was the fact that the different regions were affected. The contamination in terms of death by region was more spread in Italy than in Lombardia, that was the most affected in the country. How the government responded, creating some 21 indicators, making possible risk assessment based on probability and impact. These are the list of indicators that the decree of Ministry of Health on 30 April decided and were applied in November. These are the algorithms that we used, and we defined 4 scenarios. 4 scenarios from green to red, the most critical one. Which is the situation? The situation was worsening, starting from the beginning of November. So this is the evolution of the colors of the Italian regions. And let me say the red regions are in lockdown, more or less. We are quite lucky because yesterday, the situation was relaxed and some of the red regions became orange again. What we learn very quickly, we need some, in the first wave, light and ad hoc procurement procedures. We need to increase the equipment for intensive care, effective systems to track contacts, and we need some mechanism procedures to support the population and focusing on social digitalization. Second wave suggests us to increase not only the infrastructure and the equipment, but also we need specialized health staff because we need doctors, specialized doctors, and to enforce also the health system for not COVID patients. Again, what general lesson learned, and this is my last slide, we got a new awareness of the pandemic risk that is more probable to occur with respect to what we perceived in the past. We need new communication approaches to properly inform population of the pandemic risk. We have new policies and tools to activate supervisory strategies at national and regional level to be prepared and to increase resilience in the countries. So we can take advantage of the precursors of these pandemic phenomena and try to figure out some tools and policies at national level that can help territories to face these huge and important emergencies such as COVID pandemic. So thank you all for your attention.
Okay, thanks so much for Dr. Simona. And maybe the 3 speakers presented for COVID-19's features. So any questions on the floor to 3 types of speakers? How do we figure out the questions on the Zoom meeting? Maybe we need more help.
Yes, so I saw that there was some question, but there have been asked by the speakers themselves, and also especially Johnston Wong. So everybody can go to the Q&A part to monitor that. But also we have a question in
Jean-Paul,
in the general chat place, so asking to maybe all speakers if they are how to involve NGO and other bodies in the crisis, in COVID crisis management. So how was it done in Wuhan, for example? Please, maybe Mr. Wong.
Yes. Well, I would love to share. Actually, NGO has contributed a lot in the process or responding to the crisis. The government in Wuhan, of course, they were very busy. They also do a lot of work, but particularly in mobilizing health resources. They organized the doctors from various places to go to Wuhan and set up what we call cabin hospitals. And then they try to bring experts of similar kind of disease from all around the country, and then they go to Wuhan to man these cabin hospitals. So this is what the government do. And then the government also try to mobilize the community workers, as I mentioned in the slide, is 5-in-1 model. However, that is still insufficient. There are a lot of things that we have never imagined. And then there is sometimes even beyond coordination. We know that the government, they have a central team stationed in Wuhan, and then it's like a central point of control. But however, for example, we know that a lot of doctors after their work, or nurses after the 1 day or 2 days of heavy work, they need to go back home, okay, to take a rest. But there's no public transportations, How can they solve the problem? A lot of Wuhan citizens, residents, some of the residents say, okay, free ride. I would drive. They use WeChat and say, I would drive for anyone, okay, who are particularly the medical professions. Or I would drive, some daring people, I would drive the patients to the hospitals. Because when the city was locked down, there's no public transportation. Okay, so a lot of volunteer groups actually enter into the pictures. And then, as I mentioned, when they lock down the community, the older people cannot get food because they closed down all restaurants. All restaurants were closed. So you have to go to the market, buy the vegetables, and go home and cook. But if you were locked down, how can you get the food? Okay, for the more wealthy people, they can ask order delivery by using WeChat. But the poor people, delivery is very expensive. So that's, I say, a lot of volunteer groups come into the picture and help people to deliver what they need, the daily food, okay? And of course, a lot of social work agencies were all mobilized and then trying to help with the monitoring. I say in a community, when people go out and go in, they have to check whether they are infected. They have to check those QR code. There's not sufficient manpower. The security people are all tied up. So a lot of voluntary groups and then NGOs, even social workers, professional social workers, they come to volunteer and become the monitors. And then, so there's a lot of interesting things happen in that time. And yeah, I think all international NGOs are also trying to help as well. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. We also have some question for Dr. Zaguri about COVID circulation around the world. The first one is about Africa from Kailash Gupta, our TIEMS member. And also I add something about a recent paper issued 2 days ago on a French journal, scientific journal, saying that maybe the Russian flu 1 century ago, I mean 1890, was possibly a COVID. And what is your opinion about that, Dr. Zaguri, about the circulation worldwide and also the existing other COVID?
First, Jean-Paul, sorry, just first, I will answer the question who was asked in the discussion panel about Africa. Why about 17% of the population got only 3% of the deaths? So it's, in fact, there are 3 main reasons. First one is demographical reason, of course. As we know that the over 65 years old people in Africa is less than 3% compared to 20+% in the Western countries. That's the main one. The second reason is about temperature. And I observed that in South Africa, for example, In August, it was nearly 500 people, 500 deaths a day. And now with the change of weather, it's coming down to less than 50 a day. And the third one is for immunological reason, with cross-infection possibilities or BCG vaccination, which stimulate the T cell reaction. That was for the first question about the African, which is a good thing, toll, which is very, very, very low. Now, I just listened to the last question about the paper you asked about. I didn't know about the paper, but what I think that we need time. And already in 10 months, we've got so many papers, so many articles, and which has never been seen before. For example, there was in 10 months of SARS, of COVID, there was as many papers of 10 years of HIV. So to absorb all these data, we need time, and this needs to be confirmed. Thanks.
So probably the last word to Simona Cavallini, maybe about the future in Italy. Do you foresee, are you prepared, do you think, for the third wave, if it comes?
Yeah, good question. We have some lesson learned from the first waves. So what I can say is that a focus approach at regional level, focusing on the actual condition of the territories, properly address the health issues, the health limitations, and does not affect so much the social and economic condition of people living there. Also from the second wave, we found a number of shortcomings in our approach. Some of them are the tracking of the contamination. So what we defined as an app to track contamination, to be honest, is not working for a number of reasons. We focus on the equipment for intensive care to give more power to the hospitals and first aid, but we forget about doctors and medical staff that we need with the special competencies. So it's quite impossible to find outside because the entire world is in the same situation of us. So maybe a number of investments should be done in the health sector, and we try to learn from what we experienced in the past months, and finger crossed for vaccines.
Thanks, Simona. We unfortunately have to close. I will give the floor to Mr. Professor Young-Jaeli to close the session. I stress Mr. Wong to answer on the Q&A to a Morocco friend question. Yes, it's done. Maybe you are going to do that about vaccination in China. Okay, thank you, Mr. Wong, writing the answer because we don't have time. Mr. Young-Jaeli, please close the session.
Okay, thank you so much for your presentations. Okay, take care of your health, maybe to prepare that, in the future. Okay, see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.